Hey wine fans, Stephen here from the Napa Valley Wine Academy content team with my weekly update on what is new in membership. We have an exciting week of stuff all ready to go for you. First up, our friends at Wine Masters TV have produced a nice 30-minute episode all about sparkling wines. Now, rather than go for the more famous sparkling wines, which most people have a good idea about, they've gone beyond just uh, the major wines and looked at stuff from around the world, including one of my favorites from Tasmania. Uh, they have a lot of fun. You can see by the picture just here that they're having a lot of fun with flags and different styles. As usual, they do an experimentation. So they talk about the different methods of sparkling wine, and then they do an experiment with one of those methods, which is just the carbonation method, where you just inject CO2 straight into a wine. So they have a little play with that, which is great. Next up, we have a recording of last week's masterclass, which happened at Napa HQ with Alessandra Angelini of Capazzo Winery in Brunello. Now, people really love this because it's very intimate, and she was talked a little bit about the region, her journey, and her winery. And so hearing those stories was really, really fun. If you did miss it, the recording is great. So definitely check in on that. And if you're like, I'm missing out on all these great things that are happening in Napa, because you're like me, you don't live there, we actually have two more fantastic presentations this week. We have the Napa Valley with Diane Wu, and then we have the Vinos de Pastos, which is all about wines from Jerez, so all the sherry wines. So that's on Thursday and Friday. You can tune in live onto our live stream. You simply go to the top of the screen, hit the live stream button, and you'll get to this page here. So as you can see, we have two discovery classes this week, Thursday and Friday. So definitely tune in. That is Pacific time. My advice to you is to have a glass of wine, maybe a bit of food, some hors d'oeuvres of some kind, and just enjoy. They're really, really fun. And on the side, we have a little question bar, or little communication area where you can ask questions as well and really actually participate, even if you're not there in person. Next, on to our theme for the week. So last week we talked about Provence. This week we are heading slightly west to the Languedoc. So let's look at some of the grapes first. So I've got Picpoul and Carignan. So Carignan's known by lots of different names from around the world. And it's actually far more prevalent than I expected it to be. It's one of those grapes that can be grown in very, very high yields and not be fantastic, or particularly if it's old vines, kept to a much lower yield, you can get some amazing wines, a lot of extraction and flavors, which is really inspiring. So Carignan can be, a lot of different things. Now, what I found particularly interesting about this, so of course we go through, what it tastes like, how it's grown, winemaking, that kind of thing. But I was really intrigued by where it's grown. And so there's a lot of regions here that are particularly dry. So Tunisia, Morocco, places like that where they just don't get a lot of rain, and Carignan can do really well in these kinds of climates. Turkey's another one. So far more prevalent than I expected it to be, particularly in Spain. Really interesting grape. And then the other one, which is pretty prevalent in the Languedoc, particularly around Picpoul de Pinet, is Picpoul, of course, spelt differently to the region. Now, Picpoul, I think, is one of the most consistent wines out there. If I see Picpoul on a menu, I know it's going to be affordable and I know it's going to be tasty. So this is really fun to put together because I think it's a really cool grape that is very enjoyable. Sadly, it's really not produced in that many regions. So hopefully that changes and people say, hey, let's grow some Picpoul because it's a cool grape. So, of course, we need to have some maps to go with this week. We've got more to come next week on the Languedoc. So we've got two this week. We have our flat map, which looks at, little sub-regions and things within the Languedoc. You can see there it's very comprehensive. And then we have our boundary map, or border map, of the full Languedoc. So this is where you can grow grapes. I'm not saying there's grapes everywhere here, but this is where you can grow grapes in the Languedoc, and this is why it is the biggest region by volume in France. So a lot of grapes being grown here. Excellent. So moving on, we also have our cocktail for the week, and that is the Sazerac. So Sazerac's really, really famous. Unfortunately, we can't actually know what the initial or the exact recipe is because the history of it is, not exactly 100%, and people have different recipes for it. So the good thing about that is you get to do some experimentation. So it's a strong cocktail. It's generally brandy or rye or a combination of the two, along with bitters for a lot of aromatics. And then the secret to this recipe is our new ingredient, which is absinthe, which gives it that nice licorice character, very mild, because we're doing just a rinse. So if you want to learn more about the Sazerac and particularly about absinthe, check this article out. We're almost halfway through our series already. And that's it for the week. That's all the new stuff for membership. Lots of stuff to check out there and to learn about. In the meantime, I hope you have a fantastic week. Drink something tasty, a lovely glass of wine or two, and even a Sazerac, and I'll be back next week with our next update. Cheers.